I can do like a little, yeah, for the audience members at home. I guess I'll introduce myself. My name is Rachel Frederickson. I'm a third-year doctoral student at Michigan State University in Bassoon. And this interview is for a project that I am doing with a fellowship that I have through the Residential College of Arts and Humanities, also at Michigan State. And it's called the Love the Learner Project, where we are currently in the stage of interviewing professors that we know and love from lots of student feedback or our own personal experiences as far as them being amazing and knowing just how to get into the creative aspects of those students. So I'm interviewing Dr. Schillinger. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Dr. Christin Schillinger. I'm the bassoon professor at Ithaca College, big new music guru, and huge teaching. I'm addicted to teaching, so this is perfect, and I'm looking forward to it.
Woohoo! Well, I really appreciate your time and helping me out with this really cool project of ours. So our first question that we have is, why did you become a teacher, and then why did you go into academia?
So not shocking, I get asked this a lot. And when I went to college, like a lot of young students, all I knew is I wanted to do bassoon.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know in what way. I didn't know what options there were. I just knew this is my thing. This is what I want to do. When I was looking at master's programs, I still hadn't really narrowed down what I wanted to do. I just knew, and that's quite unusual nowadays, but when I was in school, it wasn't. You just like kept doing bassoon and figured it out as you went. So in my first semester of my master's degree, this was at Michigan State, go Spartans. Barry Stees was my teacher, and he gave a pedagogy class to the graduate students. And it was in that class that I realized, wow, I really love this. Like, this is hip. And a lot of my colleagues in the studio were kind of like, we have to do these pedagogy projects. We have to do them. But I loved it with a passion. And I remember in my final, we had to bring in somebody who'd never touched the instrument and teach them a first lesson in front of Barry Stees. And I remember him telling me afterwards, you have a real aptitude for this. So and that stuck with me. And so that was my first semester in my master's. So for the next year and a half, I really did a lot of observational learning. How do people teach? What's effective? What's effective for one person and not another? Who the master pedagogues, why are they considered that? So I did a lot of observation and also a bit of research. And so by the time I was applying for doctoral programs, I knew I want to be a bassoon professor. So I looked at programs that would help my growth in that area.
Awesome.
No regrets.
Totally. And I think for now, for me too, like that going into a doctoral program, I think with that mindset, that definitely does help the trajectory of everything too.
Yeah. You want to have mentors who understand your path and understand what you're doing and can help you along the way. So,
yeah. Awesome. Okay, so, and it could be from any time. Tell us about a time when you were the best teacher you have been, and what words would you describe yourself as a teacher?
So I think I think the line between a really great teacher and a really not great teacher, it's a very thin line. Or maybe not a really not great, but an adequate teacher. It's a really thin line. For me, when I know I'm on fire, when I know I'm really getting a lot done, it's when I am being very empathic to the student. I'm listening to them. I'm watching their body language. I'm paying attention to subtle visual cues as to what I'm saying and how I'm saying it, And if they get excited, if you see the light bulb come on, then I keep going down that path.
Mm-hmm.
I find that knowing my students, really knowing them, knowing what their goals in life are, knowing what their career goals are, knowing why they came to bassoon, having this full picture of them helps me in my teaching. Knowing what other areas they study. I have consistently had people that are doing heavy medicine, and that's a normal pairing, but heavy medicine
Mm-hmm.
and heavy bassoon. And knowing, okay, they're more scientifically minded. So I'm going to speak with them, interact with them completely differently than my students that from the time they were like 10 were bassoon, 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 bassoon. So yeah, so a direct time, that's kind of the general, a direct time. I have a student actually, who maintains an Instagram account, like a lot of students do right now practicing. And I knew from this student's account that they were very frustrated and not feeling as though they were progressing.
Mm.
And so the next lesson, when they came in, I just totally mixed everything up. I knew they were progressing, but oftentimes what you hear in yourself is not what's actually happening. And so I knew they were progressing, but in order to help their mental state, in order to help their motivation, I just changed everything up. All new A2 books, all new exercises, new repertoire. And I could tell by the end of the lesson that the student was really motivated and excited and enthusiastic. So I felt, okay, yeah, that's my goal, is to not just teach how to be a bassoonist, but to hopefully instill some of my enthusiasm about the instrument and the field to them. Yeah, so I'd say that's one example of when I felt like a good teacher. Yeah, way to go me.
Well, because that definitely, if you're able to see the spark happen again in the student, I'd say that's a great example.
And it's normal. It's totally normal for students to ebb and flow, and professionals. We all have those weeks where we're like, I suck. Why am I doing this? I'm a hack, and that's totally normal. I think the difference between a professional and a student is that we already have our careers.
Mm.
And so we can kind of go, well, I suck, but at least I'm here. Whereas a student, you have your entire future riding on this moment. And so when you have these moments of self-doubt, it can just be debilitating. So I think one of my roles as a teacher is to help students walk through that journey.
Yeah. And we love you for that. So from that description, would you then describe yourself as an enthusiastic teacher? just for like little adjectives so I can write them down.
Yeah, I definitely know that I'm high energy when I teach, very high energy. I'm very enthusiastic, but I'm also genuine. It's not fake. I genuinely love the bassoon and everything about it. And that passion, my personal passion, comes through when I'm teaching. So I think that genuineness, for some people, maybe enthusiasm is not their bag, and that's cool. That doesn't make them less effective. But it is mine, and I get perhaps overly excited when my students have breakthroughs.
Do you make them jump? Woo, you got it!
I know, I'm like, this is amazing, and they just kind of stare at me like, okay.
You need to take it down like 10 notches.
So, but it's my thing. I am quite enthusiastic and energetic.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so on the other side of that coin, so we get the pet introduction. What's your dog's name again?
This is Roscoe. Roscoe, can you look in the camera?
You got a brief glimpse of Callie, and she's going to come back over, so just real quick.
Roscoe is a mama's boy, so whenever I'm in my studio's in the basement, whenever I'm here, I have to bring him downstairs or he'll sit upstairs and whine.
Aw, yeah. This is Callie. She is definitely my little baby girl too. Aww. As you can tell, she's like, please just love me. But I'm like, ow, claws. So, anyways, back to the questions. On the other side of the coin, what about, can you tell us about a time when you felt unsuccessful in your teaching?
Well, this is why I said it's a thin line. Because sometimes, we've been on this journey as professionals, as professors, we've been exactly where you are. And we're on this other side. And so we can see the whole picture most of the time. Whereas the student is very aware of the here and the now, and maybe they're scared of the future, but they're, especially the younger you go. So like undergrad particularly, they're very obsessed with right now, right here. But as a professor, it's my job to not only be present in the right here, right now, but be looking 10 years down the road. What experiences do you need to meet your career goals? And it's my job to make sure that those are being provided and being taken advantage of. Sometimes I'm very open with my students. I try to be very transparent, but sometimes that inability to really see quite far ahead causes a rift. So oftentimes I'll be like, hey, you need to do this ensemble next semester. Or, hey, you need to make sure that you take this class over here.
Yeah.
And, you know, for whatever reason, maybe their best friend's not in that ensemble, or they don't like the particular teacher teaching that class, you know, they're very in the present, and it's hard for them to see the whole picture. And oftentimes I can explain it and say, here's why, here's the trajectory of why this experience is important. And they get that and they'll go. And other times they just really fight you. And that is probably, I can think of numerous, which I'm not going to talk about, but I can think of numerous examples where that disconnect, that's when I'm my most frustrated, because I'm not able to help them see the global picture.
Yeah. Cool.
I have to say, on the flip side, to give the students some cred, I also have to make sure, as I've grown and aged and matured, hopefully, when I'm in those moments, I really try and ask a lot of questions so that I can, maybe there's a deeper issue at play that I'm not aware of. So I really, when I'm getting frustrated, I really try and back up and ask more questions so I can understand. I know why I'm frustrated. Yeah. Why are they? So, yeah.
Well, yeah. And the more distance with age you get, like, I'm already seeing it too, just from the current undergrads now to where I am, we just don't relate as well.
Well, yeah. And I mean, you can certainly relate with them, but it's different because, again, with the addition of age, you can look back on an experience you had in undergrad that maybe you didn't like at the time, but now you're like, oh man, wow, that really helped me.
Yeah.
There was a class I had in my undergrad. This is kind of my famous story here. That another bassoonist and I took this class. It was an academic class, and we rotated when we would skip. Because
oh my gosh.
So boring. So it was like, okay, every other week one of us would miss a class. You know, it was so boring. But ironically, that class, the things I learned in that class, I hear them coming out of my mouth.
Oh, wow.
So that's why I say sometimes the very here and now experiences we have when we're young, we can't quite understand how it's shaping us yet.
Yeah. Because again, at that point, we don't see the full picture. Yeah. Right. And there was something that I had learned back when I was an RA at Brevard, that we had this, I forget what you call, I guess a psychologist, and she studied the young adult brain, and that we don't actually fully connect from the stem of the brain to the front until we're about 26. And I'm like, oh.
This connect is real.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I will say that I adore teaching college age. And what you're describing is part of it, because when students come in to work with me when they're 17, 18 years old, they're little mini me's of their parents.
Yeah.
You know? And by the time they graduate, they've blossomed into these beautiful human beings that are uniquely themselves. And I
Yeah,
just love watching that transformation.
for sure. And being able to talk at mostly normal too. This is what I found when I was teaching band. Yeah. Ooh, I can use my normal language and they'll get me.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I have the utmost respect for K through 12. I do not have the patience. It takes a very, oh my gosh, it takes a very special person, very talented person to work K through 12, and we need more of them. And yeah, cool. Great respect. But I love my college kids. They're adults.
Yes, young adults. So what about those students that you don't initially connect with? There was one person I had talked to that said it took them about 3 months to connect with a student. Have you come across any of those in your time at teaching in academia?
Yes. I try really hard to ask a lot of questions.
Yeah.
So sometimes I'll bring people in for a one-on-one read making session, not only to work on reads with them, but to just get to know them a little better. And I alter my teaching. My teaching is incredibly flexible, and I alter my teaching based on what I've learned. So I have a student right now, he would not mind me telling the story. He's pre-med and bassoon. And I could tell that I would say things and it just wouldn't register. Mm-hmm. And so I had a lot of conversations one-on-one with this student to get to know him better, to kind of figure out, why do you think the way you think, and how do you learn? What's your learning style? And through a number of actually one-on-one read times, I got to know him so much better. And I was able then to know how to connect with him, how to use repertoire to help, what exercises would be most beneficial for him, because the mental side of practicing is just as important as the physical. So for me, the students that I there's some you just connect with off the bat.
Right.
The ones that perhaps not so much, I will try and spend some one-on-one time with, go to coffee, have a read lesson, just so I can understand more of how they think. For me, usually the students I don't connect with right off the bat, it's that I'm so energetic when I teach that they're a little, whoa. And so, you know, I kind of, it's a growing process. They get used to me and I get used to them. And I also tone it down or ramp it up based on students.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good to, again, be flexible in that too.
I would say, I tell my freshmen when they come in, that, you know, it's going to take probably till midterm. So about, 5-6 weeks for us to really get in the groove with each other. But I tell them it's a collaborative process. So if I say something and it's not working for you, tell me, so we can kind of find our groove. Most students, I kind of am able to get in the groove within a few weeks. Some it does take to midterm, because again, they're 18 years old. They've moved out of home for the first time. They're having to wake themselves up. They're having, you know what I mean? Like there's lots of changes. So some it does take a little longer. With every student, like I mentioned, it's an ebb and a flow. You go through times where you're just on fire in the collaborative teaching learning relationship. And then you go through times where it's like, come on, practice. So.
Totally. Have you ever had I guess maybe going back to the story about like seeing beyond and taking a class, have you ever just had a student just like be like, no, not doing it, total denial?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I've had a couple, and I mean, it's more common than you think, because it's just more common than you think. You're looking at it from a grad age. Usually by the time I am working with master's students, they're pretty much like, tell me what to do. I get it. Like,
Yeah.
you have a job, I don't have a job, you tell me, So I find that the older they get, the more open they are.
Oh, okay.
Usually, younger students, it can be difficult. And again, what I've learned through examples of this earlier in my career is in lieu of getting angry or frustrated, to really sit and talk with them and say, why don't you want this experience? I know you hear me when I say you need it. Why I'm not hearing you when you say you don't want it. So help me. And we can usually come to some sort of understanding. That took me a long time to figure out. Because when I was younger, I was like,
why not
do this? But as I've gone through these, you learn with every student. I mean, I'm constantly, I think that's part of the reason I'm a teacher, is I love learning. So with every student, I become a better teacher.
Totally. I guess, well, you kind of already answered that question. I was like, well, how do you feel about it then? Yeah, you did. Okay, so kind of more into the bigger chunk of this is boundaries. How do boundaries for you play in your teaching, especially now that we're virtual?
So I'm going to talk first about live teaching, and then I'll talk about the process right now. When I got my first job, I was 24. Yeah, I was 24 when I got my first job. And so I walked into this position where I'm teaching undergraduates and graduate students, and not some, all of the graduate students were older than me. And the undergrads, here I am 24, and I had undergrads that were 21.
Yeah, so, not too much different.
So age-wise, we were peers. So when I got that job, I did some very specific things. One, that's why I go by Dr. Schillinger.
Right.
Now, if I were starting my career now, I'd be like, yeah, call me Christin, I don't care. But I was trying to just by verbiage say, I know what I'm doing. I'm in this authority position. You need to respect that. So just by going by Dr. Schillinger, which eventually became Dr. S, because nobody can say it or spell it. But that was something I did very specifically. Also, even though my first job, which was University of Nevada, was very, it's very casual out there. It's totally West Coast. I always dressed professionally at work. West Coast meaning not San Francisco, LA, like,
right.
Like the professors would wear jeans, but I never did. Again, just to make not only a verbal distinction between me and the students, but also a visual distinction that I know what I'm doing. I'm here, I also worked very hard to not hang out with my students.
Oh.
Because we were so close in age, I'd go to a music festival with friends, and there's my students there. Because we're very close together in age. So I worked very hard. It was a huge growing experience for me, because I did have problems where I'd go grab a cup of coffee to work with a student, and the student would misconstrue it as we're now best friends. So, but that was a really big learning experience for me. That was a very hard thing to learn, where you can keep the boundaries and where you can't. I think I was probably overdoing it with the boundaries. So fast forward to now at Ithaca, I still, out of habit and respect for myself, I still dress nicely every day. I still go by Dr. S. I'm kind of used to it. But I'm much more casual in sharing things about my own life. They all know, they've all met Roscoe. They've all come over to my house multiple times. They all know my fiance, Mike. And I think I'm able to do that in part because I am older.
Right.
I'm now the age of, oh God, forgive me, but I'm a little young on the young side of their parents. Sure. But theoretically, so that helped a lot. And I'd say my middle job, Miami, was kind of in between.
Yeah.
In between, I was not as open with my own life. I mean, I don't share my problems with them,
No.
but I'm just, you know, they know me, I would say. They don't know this kind of image I'm portraying. They actually know me, which is great.
It's not a front.
Yeah. So I'm much more, I joke around with them. You know, I was so careful in my first 2 jobs. I would never say a curse word. And I'm no sailor now in front of my students, but I don't care if a random, you know, pops out. So I'm much more myself, I would say, with my students now. But the age difference does help.
Yeah.
You asked about virtually. I list my cell phone number on my syllabi, but so that my students have it in case of emergencies. But I also say on my syllabi, here's the order of reaching me. Email, then text, then phone call. Like, you know, last case resort should be using my cell phone. Like, you know, absolutely email. We all walk, of course I say this, we all walk around with our phones, and our phones get our emails. So they know if they email me, I'm going to get it instantly. Now, this generation is very big on Facebook Messenger. So, and I had a student at another school explain this to me, that they like it because they can share the conversation, and I can't remember all the reasons, but I was like, that makes sense. But it's easier to get multiple people. So with that, I find that these students message me on Facebook a lot, and I don't mind that. It's not an intrusion. So I don't mind that. And they know that if it's an email, they know the difference between a messenger conversation and an email conversation. So if they want to talk advising, if they want to talk courses, that's email. If they want to say, hey, Dr. S, I forgot the combination to the contra locker. That's fine. And they're really, really good about that. They're very, very respectful. I had a student that did text me and actually apologized afterwards, but the text was totally warranted. I was like, you don't need to apologize. So during this virtual time, I have encouraged them. Granted, we don't officially start till Monday, but I've encouraged them to be as open and communicative with me as possible. I just want to hear from them. So whether it's Facebook Messenger, whether it's text, whether it's email, I just want them to know that I'm here, because they're used to seeing me 3 to 5 hours a week. And all of a sudden, So right now, I totally don't care if they text me, and I'm actually encouraging it. Although I think they'll keep Facebook messaging. That's just their thing.
And that's interesting, because for me, it's like kind of both that and Instagram. I'm not a huge Instagram user, but I have one because of the studio page and all that. So that's very interesting. I never thought about Facebook Messenger that way.
And they have people, my students that are on Messenger, some of them don't even have Facebook accounts. It's really interesting. I wish I could remember why that student said this generation prefers it. I don't mind. I just find it interesting.
So I guess that kind of negates, like, because I think when social media just started blooming, if you will, it was kind of a big no to be friends with your professor, and now it's the dynamic shift, I think.
So when I was younger, I would not friend students. This is when it first came out. I would not friend students. It was, we're talking like MySpace days. Like, sorry to age myself, but absolutely, it was 100% social. When I got my second job at Miami in Ohio, obviously I friended all my students that I left behind in Nevada because I wanted to keep up with them.
Right.
And and I got a lot of invites from students at Miami, not just bassoon students, but general woodwind players and people who had theory with me. I taught theory there. So I started accepting them, and I realized the power that social media has. It totally transformed my account. Now my account is really about modeling what it is to be a professional in this world, and that you can balance work and life. So I really take my social media posts quite seriously.
Yeah.
And then I'm not on Instagram personally. I run the Ithaca Bassoon University Instagram account. So that's 100% my students, unless we're like on summer, and then for things to post, I'll be like, here's me practicing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I see social media as fabulous as a sense of not only connection, which I'm grateful for, but also modeling. I love that students I've never met from across the world can get in touch with me and feel it's okay. You know, I think back when I was 17, 18, I knew the bassoonists I knew were limited to who I studied with. And, you know, I knew the names of players, but to actually feel like you knew something about them, like, wow, what a gift. So, yeah.
No, that's great. Now, forgive me if this sounds a bit redundant, but from your description of your teaching, what you are describing, it sounds like you really love your learners, and I'll put in and that you love teaching, as you have said. Would you describe it that way as far as like love is concerned?
Oh, yes.
Yes. Okay.
It is my passion. And I think that I've had to think, the whole coronavirus world shutting down happened on our spring break.
Yeah.
So to give the faculty time to regroup and plan how to do remote instruction, they extended our spring break by a week. And I'm getting back to your question. They extended our spring break by a week, and then we're going a week later in May.
Oh, wow.
Which
okay.
I'm grateful for, because it really gave us all time to do the research on what are the best platforms to use, what apps can be helpful, all of this. Anyway, I lost my train of thought now. Oh, the loving teaching. Yeah. In this, I have had to really do a lot of soul searching, because I'm doing better now. But last week I was just miserable. My gig got canceled. My, classes were canceled. I wasn't seeing my students. And I really had to think, okay, how do I not go absolutely insane during this time? And somebody said, oh, it's because you're so extroverted and so type A, you have to have something to do. But I realized, that's probably a little of it, but it's bigger than that. My biggest passion in life is both playing bassoon and teaching bassoon. And one does not usurp the other.
Right.
It has been, and I think that's what this time, I knew that, but it reminded me of it, because I never stopped playing. I've been practicing every day, but it was that inability to work with others, to work with my students and to see their faces. And that's been what's so torturous. Yeah. So I'm so excited to get back in Monday, to get back into the groove, although remote groove.
Yeah. We'll put that in air quotes. So I guess then to extend on that line of thought, for you, loving your students is being in the interaction part of it. Is there anything else you would add to that?
Definitely the interaction. As I said before, watching them become who they are. And I'm far enough along in my career now that I have students that are out in the world, and to watch what beautiful people they are and how they make a difference in the global community. And it's a special thing. And I love being just a small part of their life. It's just an overwhelming feeling. I don't have kids. And so my students, it's like I have this mass amount of children out in the world at different levels. And
Yeah.
I care deeply about what each of them are doing. I follow them on social media. Some send me emails, which I totally love. So, yeah. So for me, it's not a 4-year process of you're my student, now see you later. It's lifelong.
Yeah, lifelong process. Oh, yeah, I feel the same way. Even if it's a smaller portion of that. um, and do you feel like any of the, yeah, I guess not so much, but has any of that passion for you changed over time, or has it just gotten exponentially more?
It's just gotten more.
More.
Yeah, as I've been graced to actually watch some of my students become full adults and be, it just makes me realize how thrilled I am to be the smallest part of their lives and their journey. And so it just, yeah, it's just, I've gotten more passionate about it, if that's possible.
Oh, yeah, totally. And I guess now we're kind of going to shift into like how students might perceive that maybe is how you care for them. Would you say that they get that sense from your passion in being involved?
I would be shocked, horrified and shocked if they didn't genuinely know I care for them as people.
Okay.
Because, and that for me is the priority. I am much more concerned with somebody being happy and healthy and passionate about their life than playing bassoon. So a lot of my former students, I have a lot that are, I have some that are professors, I have a lot in orchestras, I have, but I also have I have a lot of music educators, but I also have a huge number of students that are doing something else. And I love that. What I want for each of my students is for them to find that thing that makes them as happy as teaching and bassoon make me. And
Yeah.
so that's something else. Well, then I'm going to put my energy into helping them find that.
Find it.
So
Okay.
One of my students right now, during his time, he's only a sophomore, but during his time at Ithaca College, has realized he just has such a passion for instrument repair.
Oh, cool.
He's actually got accepted and headed off to Red Wing, and I could not be more thrilled for him.
Oh, wow. So as like a transfer then?
Red Wing is a 1-year program. And
probably
more than you care to know, but he's taking a year off going there and then coming back here to finish.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. What a great opportunity.
Even if it had been a transfer, I would have been all about it because that's what geeks him out.
Yeah.
So we have to everybody has to find their path. And I'm definitely one that I feel my job as a teacher is to help ask the right questions and help guide you to find your path. Mm-hmm. So that you can be as happy as I am.
Yay. Yeah. So I guess that would that for you be like kind of your teaching philosophy or just as part of one of your 3 core values in your teaching?
Wow.
Sorry, that's a loaded question.
I know. I was like, holy cow. My teaching philosophy is one of flexibility and one of contextualization. So definitely the helping students find their path fits into the flexibility aspect. My student that wants to be an instrument repairman, we work totally differently with his bassoon since he made that decision than we did prior when he wanted to be a music educator. That's not to say I hold him to lower standards. I don't, but we work differently. Yeah. I have a student that aspires to do a master's in conducting. So that student and I spend a lot of time talking more about style and affect and time and movement as opposed to time, tone, technique, MILDI.
MILDI, yeah.
Right. And that's, again, not to say that the student doesn't do MILDI. They do, but our angle is different and how I work with them is different, and that keeps their motivation level up, and it keeps them understanding that what they're doing with the bassoon only enhances what they want to do in life.
Awesome.
Yeah. So that's the flexibility. The contextualization, we're not button pushers.
Mm-mm.
Being a musician is such a deeper, all-consuming field than simply this is C. So I work hard to help students understand the cultural and historic impacts of the music they're working on. I help them to understand, for example, if you're playing Figaro, you're not just playing the notes. Who are you playing with? Does that change? What is your role in that? Is it supposed to be cello bassoon or cello bassoon or bassoon cello?
Mm-hmm.
Helping them understand how does reading the opera actually affect your playing? How does watching the opera affect your playing? So really putting everything in context. I'm the same way with reed making. It's
Mm-hmm.
not enough to know where to scrape. It's important that you know why. And
Mm-hmm.
when you scrape there, what is the action you're taking and what's the reaction that will occur? So a lot of physics, a lot of botany, a lot of history, both music history, but also just history.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. This is a lot of good stuff. I'm excited. um, okay. So it's kind of close to wrapping it up, but it sounds to me like you're very generous. What comes to mind when you hear that word generous?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is generous with my time. And I am in my office from 9 a.m. to, depending on the day, 5:30 or 6 p.m. every day. Right. For me, it's not a come in when I teach a class and then leave. It's
Mm-hmm.
definitely, I am there. And my students know that. They just, the very fact that they know I'm there is comforting. If they got reamed out in orchestra for being out of tune, they can not wait till their lesson 3 days later. They can drop by and say, this happened. I think my reeds are screwed up, or I think I'm not doing enough in my intonation studies. Can we talk about it?
Yeah.
So definitely presence. I will say, when I started my first job, I attended every single concert that involved a bassoon.
Yeah.
When I started my second job, I attended a good 90% of concerts that included a bassoon. I just can't now.
Right.
Not only because I am trying to have a healthier work-life balance, but also because Ithaca I mean, my God, I would live there. There's so many ensembles. The chamber music is just all over the place. There's so much that one of my students is performing every single week on top of ensemble concerts. And so the generosity with my time, again, as I've both grown in my career, but also just matured as a person, I have learned to set better boundaries for myself. And that's important. That's really important. So for example, I don't make any lessons before 10 a.m. so that I can have that 9 a.m. hour to warm up myself.
Yeah.
And my students know that, so they don't even try, and they don't interrupt me during that time. It's great. And then similarly, I always block out 1 other hour during the day to practice. I never did this before. I used to always practice after work. But well, yeah, then you think about it. You're at work from 9 to 5, you eat dinner, and by the time you put in 2 or 3 hours, where's your life?
Yeah.
And so I definitely block out 2 hours a day every day, and they're non-negotiable.
Yeah.
So
Good advice.
that has been, so generosity with my time, yeah, but I'm also, as I've grown, set much better boundaries with my time.
Yeah. Well, it's good advice for us future teachers.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
When I was in my 20s and it was much easier to go back to work and practice till midnight. But I'm not in my 20s. I don't have that energy anymore. I have a family now. So it's very important to kind of make sure you're getting in the time you need so that you have time off work.
Yeah. And to not go crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though right now I feel like we kind of are.
Yeah. Even now I've created a nice schedule for myself.
Oh, what does that look like?
So during the work days, I wake up and have my coffee and my breakfast leisurely, like I do normally. And then I come down and do my warm up, which now I'm able to really extend because I'm doing so much less right now. So I have my warm up, and then I usually go up and work on the computer while watching Netflix, eat a little lunch, and then I come back down and practice.
Okay.
And then I work out. That's either here nor there. And then I have my afternoon free.
Oh,
so
nice.
I'd say afternoon from I'd say roughly 3:30 forward. Free.
Oh, okay.
And so, that way, now this will probably change this coming week because I have, so the times will change, but I'm going to keep myself quite scheduled.
Yeah. Especially for us type A people. We like that.
Oh my God, it keeps me way more sane.
Right.
And my read making, I tend to do at night. My partner's used to this. I tend to do this at night when I'm watching movies. So
you can enjoy together, but
exactly. So I haven't taken part in these awesome Blankapalooza because I'm like, but I'm really into this show.
Oh yeah, I know. Me too. Or they just happen so late at night. I'm just like, I want to sleep. Thanks. I value my sleep time.
Yes, more and more. Oh my God.
Oh, this has been so great. Just one final question.
Yeah.
Will you finish this sentence? When I am teaching to my best and connecting with students to my best, I feel
whole.
Boom. Love it.
Yeah, this has been so fabulous. These questions, did you come up with these?
We, as a group, we came up with them.
Wow, they're intense.
Yeah.
I mean, they're really good. What a great program.
Yeah, this is my second year in the program, and we're all towards the ends of our doctorates, except for me last year because that was in the middle. But yeah, and it's different people we have a person from the history department, we have writing and rhetoric, English. We're actually really music heavy this semester or this year because we have a music ed person and a choral conducting person too, who I've gotten really close with as well. I mean, this whole group has been so wonderful because for me, I double majored in both music ed and performance in my undergrad and my master's. So going into a strictly performance doctorate has been there's a little of the education side of things not there. So this has been my outlet for that. And it's been super wonderful.
Before I started teaching, when I was a student, I had done a lot of thinking about pedagogy, not just because of the class with Barry Stees, which was, of course, bassoon specific.
Yeah.
Is Bruce Taggart still there?
Yeah, he is.
I took theory pedagogy with him.
Oh, wow.
My first 2 degrees were balanced between my undergrad. I double majored theory and bassoon performance. My master's, I just did straight performance, but I worked as a TA in the theory program. So anyway, just out of sheer interest, I took theory pedagogy, and it really, I don't know if he still teaches the class, but he did such a good job of having us do a lot of observational work, like the classes you like the most, how, where does the teacher stand to teach?
Right.
What does the teacher wear? How do they address the class? How, we had to do, I remember doing these observation reports where we had to look at, are all the students paying attention? When did they stop paying attention? What were they doing instead of paying attention? And since we were observing from the back of the room, we could really tell.
Yeah.
And it was so, I hadn't thought in that way before, and it was life-changing for me. And so I'm so glad that programs like yours are coming up and helping the future to think about these issues, because it will make your learning curve as a teacher go so much faster. You know, there'll still be a learning curve when you get your first job. You'll be like, dear God, but it'll be so much easier because you are aware of these things. And I talked about the role of empathy. A lot of it, the awareness I have, even if I'm in a big room of, 50 students, the awareness I have of all of them is so important, and then just magnified when I work at the studio. So anyway, that's my long-winded way to say this is a great program, and I'm so glad there seems to be a number of them popping up.
Yeah, it's definitely changed my perspective and my life for the better.
Good.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I'm happy to be a part of it.
Thank you. Yeah.